What's the most incredible excuse you've heard from another person that turned out to be true? After a phone interview, we hired a new employee. It was her first day on the job and she didn't show up. I call her and she says that she has arrived at work and has even been briefed. I write to our personnel officer and he says he hasn't briefed anyone. In the end, it turned out that the woman had mixed up addresses and came to another company where just as well instructed a dozen new workers. Somehow, she joined them and was trained there. I'm going to be late today. Some naked junkie got on my roof. I'm waiting for the police. Dude, you could have just texted that you were running late. Sends a picture of a naked junkie sitting on his roof. Wow, you got some naked junkie sitting on your roof. Do what you gotta do. I got your back. Once I was late for work because a peacock blocked my way. My boss didn't believe me at first, but the next day, he couldn't get through because of the peacock. A colleague of mine once called into work and said that he couldn't come to work because the police wouldn't let him out of his house. Everyone at work thought he was bullshitting, but he sent us a picture of a special forces sniper hiding behind his car, watching a neighboring house. Looks like someone was being held hostage there. Fortunately, everyone was unharmed in the end. A friend of my fiance's recently couldn't get into his house for the same reason. That's some bad shit. We had a guy at work ask for a 2-week vacation to go back to Nigeria and be crowned ruler of his village. I was like, so what are you? A Nigerian prince. Turns out there's a bunch of royal families in Nigeria, and each one is in charge of their own territory. And the guy I was working with was indeed a Nigerian prince. I'll be damned. Edit. To answer those asking about his job title, he worked as a security guard. It's a common phenomenon. There are a lot of us princes. But there's one problem. The corrupt government keeps stealing money from the royal coffers. So I urgently need to send $347 million overseas. If you help me, I'll give you 20% of the total amount. Please send your bank details and I will make the payment immediately. God bless you. I walked into class 45 minutes before the end of the school day. My teacher snorted that he would keep me after class. I started to explain to him that I had actually rescued a rooster in the hallway and that the head teacher and I were taking it to the Society for the Protection of Animals. While I was telling him, I realized that everything sounded somehow unconvincing. Of course, the teacher yelled at me and ordered me to sit down. A few seconds later, our head teacher flew into the classroom and shouted happily, "You won't believe what just happened." I wasn't punished. When I was a teenager, I used to walk to work, and usually the whole trip took me about half an hour. But one time I left the house, and at the end of our street, some huge, sort of pit bull picked me up. He chased me all the way to work, right up to the door. I put chased in quotes on purpose because he kept walking kind of in front of me, not behind me. He was going very slowly, but as soon as I tried to overtake him, this big brute would speed up. At some point, I got the idea to fool him. I went to the fence, jumped over it, and started running with all my might to get as far away from this dog as possible. But he caught up with me and was ahead of me again. In the end, I was more than an hour late for work because of this running. I didn't even try to excuse myself to my bosses because I knew that no one would believe me. Our employee was late for work because she was washing her car after her friend gave birth. They were on their way to the hospital, but they didn't get there as fast as they wanted. We had a lab technician who took 4 times off because her grandmother supposedly died. Every time she had the same excuse. When we decided to catch her in the act, she brought us the obituaries, and it turned out she had 4 lesbian grandmothers. It sucks to lose so many relatives in 1 year. Middle school. The night before I left for summer camp. At 2 o'clock, I hear something glass shatter in the kitchen. I go to see what happened. The picture is like this. The whole kitchen is covered in beer. There's a broken bottle on the table. I start cleaning everything up, and at that moment my parents catch me. I try to explain to them that the bottle broke, but they don't believe me. They threaten to punish me when I get back from camp. By the time I returned from camp, my father had burst almost all the bottles of his home-brewed beer. They apologized for not believing me right away. I'd been away for 2 weeks, so it had been long enough for a lot of bottles to explode. And the funny thing is that my dad gave that beer to all his friends, and it ended up exploding on them too. They weren't very happy with it. I'm a high school teacher. Once, about 10 years ago, a student comes to me and says, "I didn't do my homework. Yesterday, while I was driving home, my car suddenly caught fire, and since my textbook was in the back seat, it burned with it." This sounded extremely unconvincing, but then he showed me the charred textbook, which was also soaked with water, allegedly from extinguishing the fire, and asked me to give him a new one. There is a possibility that he set the textbook on fire himself and then soaked it in water to avoid doing his homework. But if so, bravo. My colleague was late for work because the road he always used was closed due to an accident. He decided to take a different route, but the other road was also closed because of another accident. He calls work again and says he will try another option. But the third route was also closed for some reason, so he calls again to say he's giving up and going home. We turn on the news and realize that he wasn't lying. For most of the day, it was really impossible to get out of his neighborhood because all the main roads were closed for completely different reasons. One of my employees hasn't shown up for work for several days. Then he suddenly calls me and tells me that he is in pre-trial detention. He says that he was arrested by mistake and that he was not guilty. Turned out to be true. A colleague of mine suddenly received a notice that he had not paid child support for many years. He had a fight with his wife and was late for work. He tried to explain to her that it was some kind of mistake, but she continued to be angry with him. Then it turned out that the agency had confused the real father with my coworker. They had the same first name, last name, etc. But it's good that it was cleared up. My friend's story, not mine. He arranged a first date with a girl he was madly in love with. She didn't show up. A couple days later, she calls and apologizes, says she was in the hospital. My buddy doesn't believe her, but I convince him to give her another chance. Eventually, it turns out she was really in the hospital. They've been married for 15 years. My friend had the same thing, only she was the one who ended up in the hospital. They corresponded online for a long time, and finally she agreed to meet him. On the day of the date, she is diagnosed with pneumonia and is admitted to the hospital. At their first meeting at the hospital, he showed up with a pack of peanut M&Ms. Now they're married. In 2010, I missed a month of work due to a volcanic eruption. The ash cloud from the Eyjafjallajökull volcano, great name by the way, was the reason why my vacation in Egypt was delayed for a whole month. Is it worth saying how cool it was there? I had a real situation in junior high when my dog ate my homework. My mom had to write a note saying it was true. I had a case where one of my teacher's dogs pissed on my test. The teacher made me a copy of it so that I could study the mistakes. But even it showed traces of urine. Actually, the teacher was funny, and everyone had a good laugh about the situation. Modified, wow. I didn't think my most popular comment would be about my pissed test. Let me tell you how my mom once had to justify herself. I heard this phone conversation with my own ears. In general, my mom worked at night as a nurse and left home at about 10:30 p.m. Then one day, she says goodbye to us, goes outside, and starts bellowing at the top of her lungs, calling us over to her. We walk out and see two skunks passionately making love on the driveway between the gate and the car. These horny bastards were fucking for so long that my mom had to call work and tell them she was going to be late because she didn't want to piss off two horny skunks. She ended up standing there for 45 minutes waiting for the skunks to finish their business. In high school, a friend of mine once came to class in a tattered school uniform. When we asked him what happened, he said it had been torn by lions. Turns out his mom worked as a veterinarian at the zoo, and they had two little lion cubs in their backyard. They saw his shirt hanging out on the dryer rope and did what all kitties do. They ripped it up. A colleague of mine once calls me and asks me to fill in for her, as she has a horse outside her house and needs to wait for someone to pick it up. When I heard this nonsense, I laughed at first, but then she actually sent me pictures of the horse and apologized again that she had to ask me to work for her. She said that the horse belongs to her mom, and that her mom often rides the horse to visit her in order to please the kids from the neighborhood. As it later turned out, the horse had gotten out of the stable at night and decided to take a good walk. When it reached my coworker, she was frightened because she heard a noise at the living room window. Thinking someone was breaking in, she grabbed a knife. When she entered the living room, it turned out to be just a horse that had stuck its head through the window. It was standing there like, "Hey, you got any food? I've been out all night and I'm starving." In the afternoon, her parents brought a special horse trailer, but they had to wait a long time. When my brother asked me to help him move to a new apartment in October, I refused, citing pain in my hip. My brother was furious, but it really hurt. Then I went to the doctors, and after a few days I was given crutches. I'm still using them, and my brother is still mad. Edit. Since a lot of people are asking, I was diagnosed with tendinitis and bursitis, of the same tendon. One time we got stuck in the elevator of our university library. The guards came and said that it would take 3 hours to get us out. The girl next to me starts to panic. She has a final exam in a few minutes. The guards dialed the professor and told him that his student couldn't make it to the exam because she was stuck in the elevator.